I'm hearing, as I often do, of the tireless work that's done each and every day, the length and breadth of this country, under the leadership of the third sector. So we have from the YWCA creating positive spaces for women to engage, to national charities such as the British Heart Foundation and the Scottish Wildlife Trust, who are leading pioneering research and environmental protection schemes. I've met the Child Poverty Action Group and Kibble Education, who are providing very specialist services to some of our young people who are most in need. So to me, the role of the third sector is very clear. You're working across every issue that we face together, helping to make a difference and crucially helping to change lives. So I want to take this opportunity this morning to offer my genuine thanks for all the work that you do. The work that you do, the work that you lead is indeed truly inspiring. And it is therefore no surprise to me that despite what some recent media stories would like to have us believe, but public trust in charities in Scotland remains very high. SCVO's survey through Ipsos Mori found that 89% of people had contributed to a charity, and that 82% agreed that charities are trustworthy and act in the public interest. And you only need to look around it's what the system supports that really matters, and it supports the vital work that is being done to support communities, address inequality and to meet the needs of some of our most vulnerable citizens. And attacks on the integrity of the sector are ill-founded, and I can assure you that I will certainly speak out against any ill-founded attacks. Whether small or large, expanding or collaborating, Scotland's third sector organisations make a huge contribution to a wide variety of important areas of social policy, from the local supporting community empowerment and the rural economy, to the national, helping our economy to become more innovative, inclusive, supporting social innovation and public service redesign and delivery. And of course, on the world stage, our social enterprises have an increasingly global footprint, demonstrating that Scotland is a forward-thinking and open nation. Now, arguably, there has never been a more important time for me to be clear that we stand shoulder to shoulder with the sector. 2016 was, by any account, a year of enormous significance, and the future that we all face at the beginning of 2017 in many ways is quite uncertain. And the economic, political and social circumstances in which we all live and work in are shifting, and the harsh realities of today's challenges will require all of us as individuals, as organisations, as leaders, to find new ways to operate. The structures and the ways in which we've always worked, ways in which we may feel comfortable with, may need to evolve and may need to change. And the third sector has a crucial role to play in delivering the change that we need, and we need your help to do that. And this is true when it comes to thinking through the implications of the new powers over tax and social security. It's true when it comes to thinking through how we design and deliver public services in Scotland. And it's also true when we look to define, protect and shape Scotland's place in Europe. And the role of the third sector in all of this cannot be overstated. We need you to help us shape these debates, to tell us what matters to you, what matters to the communities that you represent and to the individuals that you work with day in, day out. And all of us here today share a common cause in creating a fairer Scotland where there's genuine equality of opportunity for everyone, and where people have a real and meaningful say in the issues that directly affect them. And Scotland's people are, of course, our greatest assets. We all know that to be true because we see it every day. But we could be forgiven for feeling unsure and anxious about the times that we are all currently living in. But I am reminded of the quote. It's a quote first used, I think, by the American TV idol Fred Rogers, who says, "When I was a wee boy, I would see disaster on the news, but my mother would always say to me, 'Look for the helpers. There are always people helping.'" And helpers, volunteers, the people taking positive action and giving themselves up for others, not for fanfare or reward, but because it's the right or the necessary thing to do. And this is the golden thread that runs throughout our families, our communities, giving pace and innovation to change and making a real difference every day. And the State of the Sector report doesn't just point to your concerns, important though they are. It also reflects the resilience and creativity of the sector. 70% of respondents are planning to create new projects, 61% are planning to recruit new volunteers, 60% are hoping to grow, diversify and identify new sources of income. And there were 600 new charities granted charitable status last year. So it is here, it is in the men's sheds, the sports clubs, the community buses, the allotments, the brownies, the street pastors and the international development charities working to overcome suffering in the global community. That's where we all stand, and it's where we all stand together. And we know that the world is indeed full of suffering, but it's also full of overcoming that suffering, and it's full of people who are determined to overcome suffering. And sometimes we just need to hang on to that thought. Of course, it's an understatement to say that there is more that we can and must do, and we recognise that the challenges are very, very real, and we are committed to doing all that we can to mitigate or to overcome the effects. Budget for the core third sector budget. It's been protected at £24.5 million. And across the Scottish Government there are significant sums being invested in third sector organisations, and I announced last week 3-year rolling funding for the equality budget, and that's an important first step in realising our manifesto commitments to create longer term certainty and security for the sector. And of course, earlier this morning, the First Minister announced a further £6.1 million for the next phase of Community Jobs Scotland, a programme that is certainly close to my heart, and it's a great example of how we can work together with the third sector to deliver lasting change, and to deliver lasting change for young people, giving them a better start to their working lives. We've also been working in partnership with the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations, the Development Trusts Association Scotland and the Scottish Community Alliance to directly support grassroots activity in communities. And that activity has focused on tackling poverty and inequality and responding to the very worst aspects of welfare reform. So together we have been testing out ways to make funding truly accessible to local communities, some of whom have not accessed Scottish Government or similar type of support before. These organisations are often a lifeline for people in a time of crisis. We know that even small amounts of money have a significant impact on communities and their ability to actually tackle the issues on the ground. So I'm therefore delighted to announce today that we propose to make a further direct investment of £1.9 million over the period 2017 to 2020 to support this very local work. This will enable grassroots organisations to secure 3-year rolling funding commitments to support their work where it is most needed. And local organisations are indeed at the very heart of our communities, and this funding will go directly to them to help carry out that vital work, the vital work that they do at a grassroots level, the length and breadth of the country. And this investment also reflects the commitment that I have to providing to the sector, to working with the sector to ensure that the support we provide continues to be effective and allows you to better plan for the longer term, including introducing 3-year rolling funding where possible. And we intend very much to lead by example and giving third sector organisations more financial certainty. And I can't think of a better place to demonstrate that than the local community and third sector organisations who are delivering support direct to communities. And it obviously builds on the announcement I made last week around 3-year rolling funding for the qualities budget. Over the coming year, we intend to work with you, work together to further develop our approach to funding. Officials from the third sector unit are holding sessions here at the gathering aimed at seeking your ideas about how we can move forward together. And I hope that you're able to go along to these and are able to play your part in the opportunity to get involved. So thank you very much for taking the time to come and listen this morning. It is genuinely great to be here, always great to visit the gathering, and I'm happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Anybody in particular got a question? Come on, don't be shy. Must be someone. I'll have to pick someone, you know. Angela, let me start then in terms of the funding environment. I mean, how is it you want to consult and work with the sector to develop a different model to improve sustainability? Have you got any initial thoughts on that?
I mean, I've certainly got a number of thoughts on the matter, but I mean, as opposed to me standing here and proselytising about the future, I think it's important that I re-emphasise some of our manifesto commitments and the early progress that we have made towards those. As I said in my speech, we have managed, despite a very difficult funding challenge, to protect not only the third sector fund, but the qualities budget and also the Empowering Communities fund as well. And last week I was able to announce as our first step in meeting our commitments towards 3-year rolling funding that we would start with the quality budget. It was very important to me that we were given a very clear message, in particular to organisations that are working to end violence against women and girls. And I wanted, as a first step, to be given a very clear message that this government would lead by example. And I chose to start with the qualities budget, mainly to demonstrate our commitment to working with organisations that seek to end and eradicate domestic abuse and violence against women and girls in all its form. But of course there's a broader third sector, and our intention is very much to work with the sector to give more security, because ultimately I want you to be able to do your job. I want you to be able to work with people as opposed to filling out copious forms year in, year out.
Right, thanks for that.
Hi, Angela. Kim Atkinson from the Scottish Sports Association. Thanks very much for that. So much good news in there. Very much welcome the continued theme of the golden thread, as I'm sure we all do. It's a very popular phrase. And I'm sure at some point I remember you calling us the first sector, so just a tactful reminder as to how much we love that one.
Yeah.
Just a question in terms of, I think there is so much good stuff going on across the sector, and I guess it's a question in terms of how across the breadth of the sector. I know sport necessarily always isn't thought of as being part of the voluntary sector, but certainly more people volunteer in sport than anything else, so we very much see ourselves as being part of that. So I guess as a collective from all of us, how can we help you share those great news stories, all the really good stuff that you've talked about? How can we help you to make more publicity and to make sure that the really good stuff that is happening across the length and breadth of the country is being heard?
Thanks for that question, Kay. It saddened me deeply when I read some aspects of the popular press articles that were, in my view, a real slur on an entire sector. And it saddened me even more when I seen some politicians aiding and abetting that. And I certainly had the opportunity to call that out in Parliament a few weeks ago. Because actually the questions I'm asked as a minister in Parliament are actually always very positive about the sector. And without fail, I will be asked questions by MSP after MSP from all political parties who are advocating for the sector or a particular organisation, shouting very loudly about the great work they're doing and pressing me about how we as a government, rightly so, can do more for the sector in its entirety. And that is as it should be. And that doesn't fit when politicians then sneak off to the tabloid press and aid and abet, an agenda that has been fuelled from elsewhere. But I suppose to focus on the positives, I think we all need to work harder to be shining a light on the great practice, on those very local organisations that are changing lives, that are having the biggest impact on communities, as well as the bigger, national stories, in and around funding. I don't have, the magic solution to how we get the good news stories front and centre, but it does require that collective effort. And I do hope that in the weeks and months ahead, as a government, we have some enormous challenges. Public sector reform has still to reach its full fruition. We've got a manifesto commitment to a local democracy bill. And we're keen to have a review, not so much just about local government, but about local governance, which is about the broader public sector. And I want to ensure that the third sector or the first sector is very much part and included in that review. And I know from actually speaking to colleagues in local government that they want to be participating in a review that actually brings all the partners. So where we can lead by example, we certainly will.
And David Howie, I'm a politics of economics student at the Open University. My question is tended now in two parts. First part was obviously regarding the idea of the community, health and social care integration and what part the first sector would play in that. Obviously not going to be a big part. The second part is obviously regarding to that question. And I've seen a report, I'm not going to say which party put out, but there was a report recently saying that the third sector is more than a mouthpiece of the Scottish Government. Would you obviously just like to say something about that?
David, I didn't pick up the first part of your question, I'm afraid.
Yeah, the first part of the question is just in regards to the integration of health and social care. Obviously the Scottish Government and the third sector are going to have a big part to play in this together. Can you just sort of, regarding people here, just sort of say how that would work, and obviously if there's anything else that would come regarding the funding for that?
Okay. I mean, David, you're absolutely right. The integration of health and social care is the most significant reform that's taken place within the NHS since the post-war period. There's a huge amount of investment in terms of time and indeed money. £8 billion in the coming financial year will be invested in social care, and the integration agenda and how that continues and how we carry that forward is absolutely crucial in the context of rising need, rising demands about how we get the most for that resource. And of course, there has to be, new ways of working, both with the statutory services as well as the third sector. And I am sure that, there will be examples that health colleagues and the government will be well aware of where the third sector or the first sector, are punching above their weight and are making a valuable contribution to the integration of health and social care. I suppose the challenge is about how we take those isolated examples of best practice and roll them out across the country, but in recognition that Scotland might be a small country, but we don't need to be doing the same things in different places. We don't need one size fits all. In terms of that accusation of the third sector being a mouthpiece for the Scottish Government, that has never been my experience. In terms of any event that I have attended in all my years as a minister. I've been a minister since 2010. This is my 6th ministerial post. I've had involvement with the third sector in each and every one of those posts, and I can assure you I have been challenged robustly by the sector in each and every one of those posts. But the serious point really is that the third sector are partners in shaping Scotland, and we need the third sector to help us shape Scotland. And I'm a big believer in that Quaker phrase, truth to power, and you can always rely on the third sector speaking truth to power.